You notice that in the very first section that Professor Minford has read, more than meets the eye, he wrote in Chinese, 颇有趣味. And the important word there is the word 味, taste or flavor. This book seems to be absolutely ridiculous when you look at it. 看起来荒唐. But if you start to think about it, if you start to look at it, examine it intimately, 细换, 颇有趣味, it's quite interesting. And the interesting thing about that is that the Chinese metaphor is interesting flavor, literally. Now, that word 味 is picked up again in the last line of the poem that is trying to say none his secret message here. This, I mean, the idiomatic translation cannot be faulted. The iambics are beautifully formed, and you don't want to change that. But the literal Chinese, however, has certain kind, what we call 言外之意, the meaning beyond words, because it says 谁解其中味? Who can understand the flavor within?
In the first chapter of this extraordinary novel, which is one of the most intricate works of fictional art, I think, in world literature. The novel sort of starts about 4 or 5 times. It makes about 4 or 5 attempts to start. Some of them in the mythological realm, some of them in the dream realm, some of them in the storytelling realm, and it's constantly shifting between the 3. And the first 3 extracts that we thought we would share with you are from the first chapter of the novel. And the first one is the very, very opening section of the novel, and I've entitled this extract, More Than Meets the Eye, and it's page 3 of your handout. The first 2 pages are illustrations from the earliest printed edition of the novel, showing the stone in its simplicity, and showing the 2 eccentric monks who you will encounter in subsequent episodes. So this is the earliest, the very beginning section of the novel. And you actually have in front of you, rather interestingly, a corrected copy of the very first edition of the translation, in which, for some unknown reason, the number of rocks was wrong. So you see my hand-corrected number there. Gentle reader, what you may ask was the origin of this book. Though the answer to this question may at first seem to border on the absurd, reflection will show that there is a good deal more in it than meets the eye. Long ago, when the goddess Nuwa was repairing the sky,
and so I said, could we read Hollow? And the idea was that I knew the characters, and most of them, or some of them anyway, and he would just sort of prattle away. I mean, he's reading it out loud first of all, and then saying what it meant. And I mean, it was a very hit or miss way of learning, but it seemed to sort of work in the end. So that I gradually got to, by looking at the text and listening to it, I gradually.
What would you say to a young translator who wants to develop their skill?
Well, in fact, I've been asked very often talk or article on the theory of translation, but in fact, I have no theory. I think you cannot translate with a theory. It should be. I think the rule that is that you are translating for people who doesn't know the source language or original language. So your translation must be pleasing, faithful. That's the two objective, and it's sometimes very difficult to be faithful and pleasing. But maybe it's, I think, better to be pleasing than faithful. Sometimes we fail both ways.
In my days in the School of Oriental Languages, the first year you learn modern Chinese. And then after that, for the second and third year, you learn it just like Latin and Greek, like a dead language. I mean, I was lucky, I got a scholarship to go to Peking when I was graduated from the School of Oriental Languages.
So which year was that when you went to
In 58.
58?
It was from 58 up to 62 two academic years in Peking. And so when I arrived at the station in Peking, I went through by the train, there was a lady waiting for me who was going to become my teacher and was graduated in French. And so I said hello in Chinese, but after that, of course, I didn't know how to talk. And she said, "What, you learned for 3 years and you cannot talk at all, not a sentence?" I said, "No, I can read." But she said, "Now don't fool me. I mean, it's much more difficult to read Chinese and to speak Chinese. You cannot read if you don't know how to talk." I said, "No, it's true, it's like that." And so they gave me an exam to see my level, and they asked me a question in Chinese. Could not understand one word of what they were saying, so I could not even answer. And so they say, "You pretend that you are able to read." I said, "Yes, that I can." So they gave me a text to translate into French just like that, and they put it me and this, "What does it mean?" And it was, I still remember, it was the text by Mao Zedong on the contradiction in Maodun. There was one adverb, I didn't know the meaning, otherwise no problem. And they say, "And you pretend that you can read mon Dieu, because that's much more difficult even for us." Oh, I said, "Yes, that's much easier." And so they put me a text of mon Dieu. There was not one word I did not know, that was very easy. And so they say, "Your way of teaching in France is very strange, you know. It's like this somebody who had graduated in French who know Latin but would not know French."